Welcome to Beyond Death, where we examine near-death experiences from people who say they died, visited the other side, and came back. Today's NDE is from a mechanic who died and met the twin brother he never knew he had on the other side. Let's get into it. Beyond Death. Let me start by saying I love your channel. Up until recently, I had my doubts about there being anything after we die. I subscribed to the when you're dead mentality. I say up until recently because about 4 months ago, I had my own near-death experience, one I have no problem sharing with your channels, so please feel free to post it if you find it worthy. I don't believe we experiencers are given near-death experiences so that we can hide and pretend it didn't happen. They need to be told, and your channel offers us that chance while retaining a certain level of privacy. What follows is the account of my experience, giving just enough backstory to let the reader know how it came about. I grew up in the mountains of Tennessee. I had no siblings, so I guess my parents chose to spoil me based on that. I was given practically everything I wanted. That is not to say I was completely spoiled, because my parents did take time to instill certain values in me that have made me who I am today. Some of these are always showing respect for my elders, always being the first person to offer to help someone in need, and attending church every Sunday. I have never once touched any illegal drugs, and even though I tried drinking as a teen, I didn't like the taste and gave it up just as fast. My teen years were spent fishing and hunting with friends and family, and I got my first job at age 14. I saved my own money and bought my first car at age 16. By the time I graduated high school, I had saved enough money to pay my own way at a trade school where I got a degree in automotive repair. I worked for a well-known car repair business for the next 6 years and then opened a garage with my best friend Tim. On Monday, May 2nd, 2022, I was working late at the shop and had to climb under a car I had on jack stands. I could not afford a lift yet. While trying to fight a stubborn starter bolt loose, I attached a pipe to the end of my ratchet for leverage, and using my foot for added torque began to push hard. The next thing I knew, a jack stand gave way, and the car undercarriage ended up resting on my chest. It hit me with enough force that I immediately couldn't breathe. The pain was intense. Unable to move much at all, I began to scream as loud as I could, which felt almost like a whisper due to the lack of oxygen. I don't know how long I laid there, but in my mind I envisioned Tim finding my body the next day when he came back to work. I wondered if I would even still be alive at that time, or if I would slowly suffocate. Screaming was doing me no good. I had to conserve my oxygen, so I laid there in pain and slowly drifted off. I awoke later to a shooting pain in my chest and realized I was still trapped. Again, I drifted off. The next time I woke up, I was not in pain at all. I was floating next to the car, and remembering what had happened, I floated down to floor level and peeked under to see my body laying there lifeless. Then I saw a portal appear above the car. I guess most people would call it a tunnel, but to me it was a portal. I felt myself float towards and into the portal, and then a force took over. I was no longer in control. I moved through this portal at lightning fast speed, and while this portal was all around me, I could see the outside as well. I saw myself leave Earth's atmosphere and move through the galaxy until I saw the light. All my life I have heard people talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, and I can now say it's real. I have been to that place. Upon reaching the end of this portal, I was kind of ejected into a meadow with green grass, a clear blue sky, beautiful flowers of every known color, and some that I did not know a color name for. Every color seemed brighter than the one before, and my mind was on sensory overload. I began to walk in this field of beauty until I came to a bubbling stream that had a small wooden bridge crossing it. I could see on the other side of this bridge sat a house, and thought to myself that maybe someone there could help me figure out where I was and what I was there for. As I crossed this bridge, I watched a rainbow trout swimming down in the water below. Once I reached the other side of the bridge, I started walking towards the house. As I got closer to the house, the front door opened, and I watched a figure of a man walk out and towards me. The only thing is, when he got close enough, I saw it was like looking in a mirror. "Are you me?" I asked with what had to be a look of utter confusion on my face. Close but not quite, he replied. I am your twin brother. I don't have a twin brother, I replied again. Well, one of us is wrong, and it isn't me, he laughed. I was an only child, yet here was a man who looked just like me saying he was my twin. I had no clue how to take this. I immediately decided my brain was playing tricks on me and said so. That is when this man began telling me that our mother had given birth to me first, and I was fine, but there were complications with his birth, and he had been stillborn. He invited me inside his home, and I noticed several photos hanging on the wall. They were all photos I had seen before because they also hung in my home. How, I asked. I've watched your life closely, he replied. How do I know any of this is real? How do I know you are real, I asked. It was then that he told me I was only visiting, and that I could ask our mother when I came back. As the sun began to set, and the sky turned to the most gorgeous shade of red, orange, and yellow I have ever seen, he told me, goodbye, brother. I next felt myself being pulled back into the portal and being moved through the galaxy yet again until I saw Earth approaching. The portal was just as fast going back as it was the first time, and I soon found myself back in the garage with the sun shining through a window. It was morning. I could hear Tim's keys in the lock and knew I had to get back into my body somehow. At first I tried laying down next to it, but that wasn't working. Then I heard a voice tell me to enter through my head, so I tried that and it worked. I was now awake in this world and began to call for Tim as loudly as I could. Needless to say, Tim jacked the car back up but called 911 because he was afraid pulling me out may hurt me more. Firefighters arrived first and soon had me out and on a backboard, even though I thought I could walk. At the hospital, doctors were amazed that I had no broken ribs, just tons of bruising. They kept me overnight as a precaution, but the next day I walked out of the hospital. My first stop was at my mother's house. I had not mentioned anything to her about my experience while in the hospital because I was afraid they might think I was crazy and lock me up. As soon as I asked my mother if I had a twin, I could tell by the look on her face. It was as if all the blood just drained away, and she asked me who had told me. He told me himself, I replied. And then I saw a flash of anger mixed with remorse as she broke down crying for a son she had lost so many years before. Before I left her house that day, I told her everything about my near-death experience, every detail I could remember. And then I told her that I loved her and that he did as well. I let her know he watches us, and that made her smile. We have come to accept that there is something greater waiting on us after we die. I also told a few friends about my experience, and most were just happy for me, but one told me that it was nothing more than my brain making up a fantasy to help me cope with almost dying. He could not explain how my brain would know I had a twin who had died. That's it. That's my entire NDE. I wish to remain anonymous if you use this in a video, because this is not only my experience, it is also my mother's story, and I don't know how she would feel about it if a bunch of people started contacting her to validate what is possibly the worst moment of her life. She relived it that day with me, and I will not see her put through that again. Please respect our privacy. Notes from Beyond Death. Can you imagine finding out you had a twin you had never known about? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay blessed.